we can start. So how to create an application. When eventually you'll be editing in the future, one of the first things you'll be faced with is creating an application which your applicants will have to fill out as you've done before, and then you selected them based on their answers. And most of the time what happens is you're left to your own devices when creating those questions, and you really, at least I, didn't have a clue what I was doing, and that can lead to some questions that don't really make a lot of sense, or questions that don't really give you an overview of the character of an applicant, and the purpose of this module is to try to remedy that. So, talking about creating an application, the first thing you want to set out is what are your goals. Meaning by goals, I don't mean your vision. I mean what are you seeking in your applicants. So are you more looking at the creativity, and you want your applicants to showcase their creativity through their applications? Or do you want to see somebody who's motivated? Do you want to see somebody who knows what their goals are? That's all something you can see through their application if you structure your questions to see that. So the first thing you always want to do is look at what are your goals, and what kind of applicants and in the end media team members you want in your team, and structure your questions firstly to cater to those types of applicants, because some people are more comfortable writing a technical application, talking about their skills or what they want to learn, and some people are more comfortable with creative applications, asking them to make something, to describe something, etc. And that's the first step you're gonna get where you're gonna take to achieve that. So we already talked about what are your goals, and I mentioned that you can test for certain characteristics through your application questions. So some of those qualities can be character, skills, motivation, ideas, goals. There's a couple of others, but for example, it all depends on the questions you ask. For example, you can ask a technical question like, what are your development goals? And through those, you can see an applicant's character and goals, because of course setting their goals reflect their character, and of course they can also give away their character through their goals, because for example you can see somebody is more work oriented if most of their goals are oriented on learning, while if some are more personal development oriented goals, somebody may be looking more to find themselves rather than just learn how to shoot a photograph, how to make a video, etc. Obviously, you can test somebody's skills, because you can always ask the question, can you provide us with your previous work? And through that, you can see their skills. And that can or can't be a factor in your selection, depending on what you want. Like if you're editing a national, for example, and you want a certain skill set to be met for your applicants, you can do that by filtering them through seeing their previous work. On the other hand, for example, if you're editing a regional and most of your applicants aren't really going to be that experienced or experienced at all, you might be looking to see other qualities, for example, their motivation. That's pretty straightforward. Or, for example, this is also a bit of a, how do you say it, a more situational one. But for example, if you have, as you would add 2 modules on vision, if you have a specific vision and you want people to tie into that vision, you can also ask about their ideas and see if their ideas are tying into your overall overreaching vision for the media team. Because of course some people just apply without reading the vision, and then in that case asking about their ideas can be a good way to see if your ideas and their ideas align, or if they've read the vision, or make them read the vision in case you ask a vision-oriented idea. For example, a question you can ask is the session team is etc etc etc, tying into the media team vision. What would you do on X and X session? And that is a good way to make most or almost all of your applicants read your vision, and then have them see if your vision is something that they want to apply to, and in that case ensure you get applicants that are at least somewhat interested in your vision. And as I've already mentioned, goals tie into character, and you can also then select people varying on their goals, or not even select people, but just see what people's goals are and then help them reach those goals by the end of the session. Then talking about formats, like in media teams especially, we have the freedom of not just accepting written applications and being able to force a standard. Like, for example, if you're applying for a chair application, it wouldn't be really make that much sense if you were forced to make a video. But for example, for media teams, if, for example, the editor is video-centric, or they want to do a lot of video content, or at the end of the day, they just want to see how well you cope with a certain format, they can say submit your applications as a video, as a writing document, as a magazine, etc. Or they can give you the freedom to do what you want. When you do that as an editor, you're achieving two things. So one, you can either see how your potential media team members are going to cope with a format that you might want to do a lot during the session. So for example, if you want to have a lot of video content during the session, you might want to see how your applicants cope with video editing, and then you can write a question and then say submit your answers in as a video of you talking or whatever. Or you just want to see how creative your applicants are, and then you can allow them to say, this is the question, you can submit it as a written format, as a video, as whatever. That's something I prefer to do because it mostly also gives you an idea of what your applicants' strongest suits are, because most people are always going to go for what they're best at to be able to present their best version of themselves. And so, for example, if somebody submits a video, you know that person's probably got some experience in videography, they're comfortable with it. If somebody writes a pretty detailed essay, they're good at essay writing. Or if somebody submits a magazine, you know they're a person who likes design. And that then gives you, again, options to see what your applicants are familiar with, what they want to achieve. Then you can also then tie that into questions like if they read about their personal development and they say they want to work on these skills, those skills, and then you're going to already know what to expect when you accept them. Like, okay, they've already got that and that knowledge in video, and I need to give them more on that. Or, okay, they have no knowledge on photography, and I have to teach them the basics. So it's something that gives you options. My preference is always to give people more freedom, because I think that always works out better than forcing a certain format. However, also forcing a certain format can be beneficial, especially if you as an editor are content focused rather than people focused, ensuring that you have media team members who have experience and are familiar with the format that you're going to be doing most of your output in. So again, tying into the first slide, talking about what your goals are, your questions should always be structured to your needs. So when you write a vision, it might be good to tie your questions into your vision. Again, as I said, to maybe have applicants read your vision, even though if they might not have read it, they decide to apply, and you make it an, let's say, invisible prerequisite, which then might force applicants to think about what they want to do at the session. Then also what you can do is avoid asking basic questions, because as there's a standard for basic questions. Since EYP has existed for almost 35 years, there's also a almost set format for answering certain questions, such as what is your motivation, etc. You already know what you're gonna write, even though if you maybe don't mean all of it. And so filtering some of those questions out might help you actually better see the character of your applicants, rather than you reading the same 15 motivation questions and essentially having a wasted question because everybody's written the same thing, and you having to judge them based on their other questions, seeing if you want to accept them into your team or not. So tying into that, what you always want to avoid is having too many questions, because it can first be daunting. You entering an media team member or editorial assistant application and seeing there's like 7 or 8 different questions that you have to answer to even apply to be selected. Some people just might be put off by that, either because they don't have the time to do that, because in the end EYP is a hobby for all of us and not a job, and we all have high school, university, jobs that we have to tend to first before ever considering going to an EYP event. So some people just might not have the time to answer 7 questions because they can't really take out that much free time for an application. However, they might be able to take the time to answer 4 questions. The same way, making your questions overly complicated or making one question multiple questions is going to achieve the same effect. For example, not asking not just what is your motivation, but saying what is your motivation, what are your goals for the session, what are your personal development goals, in one question is the same as just asking those 3 questions individually, even though it might have the perceived effect of some people thinking that it's less questions, or some people just answering superficially on some aspects. For example, them maybe just focusing on motivation but skipping over personal development, etc. Again, leading in you having less to judge from when you're looking at your applicants during the selection process. So you might have heard me talking a lot using what is your motivation as an example question. And that is a great question if asked at the right level. So as we've talked about already, there's different levels of events in EYP. You have regionals, nationals, ISs, IFs, and for all of those events, you're going to be expecting a certain level of experience from your applicants, just based on what's already been established as the norm. And so, for example, asking basic questions to an applicant who's already written a lot of applications and somebody who knows what to write to get accepted might not really be beneficial to you seeing what kind of applicant they are, compared to you asking a basic question to somebody who's applying first time to a regional, who's going to be more honest because they don't really know what is the norm to write because they're just starting out. So, for example, the question, what is your motivation, would be a great question for a regional because it's really not that complicated. It's not daunting. It doesn't really force people to think that much. They just write their honest opinion on why they want to participate in the event, and most of the time you will get that character judgment that you might want when you're reading an application. Whereas on the other hand, if you ask that question on an IS and your applicant is somebody who's been a media team member already 5, 6, 7, 8 times, doesn't matter, they've already been accepted, been rejected from sessions, they've already gotten feedback on their applications, and they are going to know what most people look for when reading those types of questions, and might be able to structure their answers in a way that may not be completely honest to their character type, but just know they know that saying those things heightens their chances of getting accepted, and in that case, that question isn't really that great of a question at that level of event, just because you're wasting a question because most of your applicants are going to write the same thing because those are the answers most people are seeking for. And then, for example, asking a question related to your vision, or asking their personal development goals, or asking what are their overall goals for the session, you're going to see a broad selection of answers based on the character of applicant, which is then going to allow you again to have a better selection process, having a better insight into your applicants. Because what we often forget about in EYP is, while, for example, let's say when you're applying for a job, you're always going to have an interview, right? And in that case, even if somebody asks you a basic question such as what is your motivation for getting this job, you get a better sense of the person that's talking, because again, you're having an actual conversation with them, compared to you just reading something they wrote without any character, and them just expressing themselves through words rather than them just being able to express themselves through their tone of voice, their body language, and what they're saying. So in EYP especially, it's important to ask the right questions for you to be able to get as much insight as possible into your applicants during that selection process, because you don't really have that privilege of having that live conversation with somebody for you to be able to judge them and see if they're the person for the job.